And the one seated on the throne said, "Behold, I make all things new." You know, for the people hearing that for the first time, the second century Christians who were listening to this for the first time could look around themselves and see, yeah, this is not the world I started out in. You know, think about their situation. They began their life as practitioners of the religion of Rome, or of Greece, or of Persia, or of Egypt. They worshiped many gods, lived by a very different moral code, a very different cultural code. They would have begun every meal by pouring out a little wine to the gods, maybe burning part of the meal as a sacrifice. My mother did that every night, you know, burning part of the meal as a sacrifice. Things were different for them. And maybe before baptism, they were judges, teachers, businessmen, shop owners. And now after baptism, they're hunted, persecuted, disenfranchised, watching their family and friends torn apart in torture. Behold, I make all things new. At this point, he's made all things different. And they wait for it to be made new. And so the book of Revelation is meant to give them hope. But what about you and I? On the day of our baptism, the deacon or priest who baptized us pointed to the garment, the white garment that we were wearing, and said, "See in this garment the new life that you have received in Christ." And he would have said to you, "Behold, you have been made new, a new creation in Christ." That theme runs all through the sacraments, from baptism to confirmation to funerals. All through those sacraments, we are constantly reminded that we have been made new in Christ. But what does that look like? You know, in our gospel, we hear the command that we've heard so often. "My commandment to you is this, that you love one another." Period. New sentence. "As I have loved you, so you must love each other." I'm okay with the first sentence. The second sentence is so much harder. "As I have loved you." To take a look at the gospel, how in fact did Jesus love? In forgiveness. Woman caught in public adultery, forgave her. Tax collector, forgiven. Compassion, hugging the leper, reaching out to the one that nobody else would reach out to. Mourning for those who were dying. His friend Lazarus, he cried. All of these times Jesus fed, taught, forgave, reached out. As I have loved you, so you must love. Speaking to us, behold, I make all things new. There's not a lot of cultures in our world that teach that style of living. There are very few other places in our world that you and I will go to and hear that our first priority today is to reflect the love of God to everyone that we meet, regardless of what it costs us. We don't hear that too often. I think, we spend a lot of time in these days. For the past 25 years, we've been talking about the new evangelization. Pope John Paul II, in his homily in Santo Domingo on the anniversary of the 500th anniversary of the evangelization of the Americas, John Paul began to talk about a new evangelization. And what you hear, especially here in the United States, when we talk about new evangelization, what we're really talking about is a new catechesis. We're really saying, got to get out there and teach it to them harder. Get them to really believe it. That's not evangelization. Evangelization is not so much believing in Jesus as it is believing Jesus. To believe that what Jesus said and taught is a way of life worth living, and that it will, in fact, bring about in our own lives the knowledge that we live in God and God lives in us. To believe that Jesus Christ is risen from the dead, that's almost a philosophical matter. We kind of take it for granted. But to believe that the teachings of Jesus are worth our life, to believe Jesus, that's a whole nother matter. Behold, I make all things new. Behold, I give you a whole new way of viewing life. Our current Holy Father, Pope Francis, you all know he was a Jesuit. And among the Jesuit practices, he recommends one for us all: the daily examen of conscience, the examen. And probably if you went to Catholic school, I got taught the examination of conscience by Mother Bernadette in the 3rd grade. But that's time to stop each day. And Francis recommends that we do it twice, in the middle of the day and at the end. And very often we say, well, yeah, that's a good idea. If I find time, no, make time. Schedule it with yourself. 5 minutes. And the examen consists of 2 questions. How has God loved me today? In my life, how have I experienced the love of God? In my family, in my friends, in the fact that I'm alive and can interact with other people, in kindness that has been shown to me. And let that move us to gratitude. And the second question is, how have I demonstrated that love to others? How have I reflected God's love to those around me? In compassion, in forgiveness, in lending a helping hand and holding open a door, in whatever it might be. How have I demonstrated the love of God to others today? Just stop and think what our lives would be like if we genuinely did that every day, twice a day, and actually listened to ourselves. I know my list for me in the examen frequently that God has loved me a whole lot more than I have loved others. And the challenge is to bring that into balance. But God's love is always more abundant than anything we could ever demonstrate. But to ask ourselves each day, how has God loved me today? And allow our answer to that to move us to gratitude. And how have I loved today? How have I reflected his love to those around me today? And allow our answer to that to move us to commitment. Gratitude and commitment. Behold, I make all things new. Behold, he makes us new.